Hi, I'm Joey with Guardian Angel Exterminating, and today we're talking about training for flea treatments 101. And fleas can be rather difficult to get rid of. Not only can there be many of them, but they can be dispersed throughout a whole entire yard or out throughout a home, and so there's a lot of them. They also like to get under crawl spaces, and in that area it can be more difficult to treat, and they like those cooler areas. Well, today we're going to be using one of only a handful of pesticides, and this is very important because most of the pesticides we use for general pest control are not labeled to treat entire space of carpets. And so because this method of treatment puts out a lot more pesticide, only a few pesticides are labeled for space treating carpets. And so one of the ones that we have a choice to use is Onslaught Fast Cap, which not only has our pesticide but also has pepperonyl butoxide, which happens to be like a synergist or an exciter that gets them moving and about through the pesticide. Also today, we always want to use insect growth regulator when we mix our product. The insect growth regulator actually prevents babies from reproducing. The way it does that is it kills off their ability to grow into the next stage of adulthood. So if the pesticide doesn't kill them, the insect growth regulator will prevent them from reaching a full reproducing adulthood stage of life. So today we're also going to be treating the outside with a granular, and with every flea treatment we do recommend a yard treatment as well, and we try to include that in the price. And also I have here some Tyvek coveralls, which I like to keep on hand just in case we run into a bad flea situation. That way you can prevent yourself from getting fleas all over your body. Okay, we're getting ready to treat the outside of a home that we're treating for fleas today, and normally we use a granular that we spread out before we actually spray the perimeter of the home with the liquid pesticide. And this particular granular, one bag treats about your average suburban quarter-acre lot. And so it's very important that we pace ourselves when we're spreading the granular. We normally just use these hardware store Scott spreaders. These things tend to last a few months, and if they're well taken care of, they're easy to replace if they break after a few months. However, they also have a setting, which is a universal setting. Right now, with these spreaders, I like to spread in between 2.5 and 3.5. 3 is a good number. Basically, that allows us to put enough spreader out without overspreading or underspreading. So it's important when you're going to fill your spreader up to do about half for the backyard and about half for the front yard, because that will allow you to pace yourself to where you don't run out before you're finished with the entire treatment. Now, what I do is I like to start out basically walking in a perimeter. The spreader normally goes about 3 feet on each side of you, and so you can make approximately 6-foot passes, and that way it goes a total of about 6-foot line. Now keep in mind, when you spray granular, it's somewhat like mowing a lawn. You're going to make consistent paths, and you're going to be going back and forth. Now if you do want to stop for any reason, it's important to let this go. That way it doesn't continue to leak from the bottom of the spreader. Also, you can pick up this if you have a flat terrain in the landscape, and you can do a little bit of spreading in the landscape area, and then you can continue to pick it up. Spreading is very important because we get all the cracks and crevices that the pest will hide besides just the foundation of the home. And usually this is offered at an extra cost, and today it's included in the price for fleas. We've done our yard treatment, and it's important to do good maintenance on our property, on our equipment, and so if we don't ever clean these out, they tend to get real grindy and not want to work properly. So after every service, I like to clean these out, not only to keep them well maintained, but also to keep our trucks clean from any granular powders that might be leftover residue. So the easiest way to clean this out is to either use a hose or a spigot and just simply rinse off the areas that gets really dusty and has to work with the granular. Another thing is to rinse off the wheels in case you happen to step in or roll through dog poop. One of the easiest ways to do this is just to fill up the bucket with water after you rinse off the wheels and the sprocket components. Fill up the bucket with water and simply spread the water through the machine. This just happens to clean it out for the next time someone goes to use it. It works as needed. We've spread out all the granular that we're going to use, which is actually about 1 bag for a 1/4 acre. If you have a half-acre home, you'll probably end up using closer to 2 bags. Now that we've finally done that, we can go ahead and start spraying. Now, when you spread granulars, you're actually supposed to inform the customer that they need to be watered in for approximately 30 minutes. And so what I normally do is, if I look at the forecast and within the next 24 hours I see rain coming, I'll communicate with the customer that it does need to be watered in, but it may be raining in the near future. Now when I spray, I've already done the granular, so I'm already, as I spray, going to start watering in the granular that's close to the house, because when we treat for fleas, not only do we treat the yard with granulars, but we also spray the perimeter of the home. Now normally when we spray for fleas, we'll usually spray about 3 to 4 feet out, and that does include places like a porch. Because fleas like cool places, it's important to spray the entire front porch and the entire back porch. The reason is concrete is a little bit colder, so they can congregate on the concrete. They like cooler areas. When you spray on the outside for fleas, it's kind of similar to when you're vacuuming the inside of a home. You want to make sure you go in consistent formation and cover a whole entire area. It's also important when you're spraying for fleas to spray on top of carpets or rugs, and to also lift them up and spray underneath, because the fleas can get under the rugs as well. Okay, now treating for fleas, we're in this garage of this homeowner's home, and it's important when you're treating for fleas to not leave any stone unturned, literally. So basically, you saw how I turned over the rugs and treated underneath them. Well, sometimes there's going to be a car in the garage and you may not be able to treat underneath the car, but it is important to treat every area that you can when you're spraying for fleas. So in this garage, if you come this way, you can see I can start spraying here. Now, once you get inside of a home, just like where I'm about to start with this garage, it's good to find a corner that you can start and work your way back. So this is a good place for me to start. I'm going to go ahead and work my way back. Now you can see here, there's some shoes, and I'm not going to bother moving those shoes. So there's going to be some things as you're spraying you just simply want to avoid. It may be shoes on the ground, it may be a towel on the ground. You just want to steer a good 6 inches away from that so you don't put any spray on their personal property. Now this is just a carpet laid out on the concrete floor, and so I can either pass it up and just do a so-so job, or I can be diligent and I can lift the carpet up and spray underneath. Spraying underneath the carpeted areas will ensure that we make sure that any fleas that are living underneath the carpet die, as well as the ones that are living on top of the carpet. Now that we've done that, I can back out and finish spraying the rest of the garage. When we treat for fleas in a home, I allow the technicians to bring in this big giant backpack sprayer because it's a little more handy since we're spraying all the carpeted areas. But one really important thing is to make sure this nozzle is almost all the way tight. The truth is, when we're spraying carpets, you want to get it a little bit more saturated. However, when we spray hardwood floors or tile, you definitely want to make sure that it does not puddle up. When you spray with a tight nozzle and a mist, you'll see little layers of mist gather, and if you're not doing it quick enough, you'll see it puddle up. Now, we don't want it to puddle up because we don't want someone to come home 2 to 3 hours later, let their dog in, and actually have a problem because they lick up the pesticide. Or we don't want their kids to come home and play on a really wet carpet. So basically, we want to be careful on how much we treat when we're using pesticide for all whole surface spray inside a home for fleas.
When treating the interior of a home, be careful not to overspray on hardwood floors or tile. Use a fine mist to avoid creating puddles.
Right now, it's really important when we're treating with pesticides to follow all the PPE or personal protective equipment, and especially when you're starting to treat with a space spray for fleas inside of a home, it can get overbearing, so you want to wear a respirator. And before I start spraying, I'll put this respirator on.
The really cool thing about this mask is it makes you sound like Darth Vader. Luke, I am your father.
Now, once again, when you treat for fleas in a home, you want to, almost like when you mow or when you vacuum, you end up overlapping some of the lines. It's similar when we spray for fleas. You want to start your way at the back end of the home, and you want to work your way backwards, and you want to overlap your treatment areas. Now, it's important because you will be on a fan spray to stop at areas like this where you see an airflow vent. And it's also important not to get the spray too high above the baseboard. Also, as you can see here, there's other personal property that you want to avoid. So you definitely want to give a good 6 inches clearance on all the personal property. But just like when you vacuum, you cover the whole accessible area as you treat. It's similar when you're spraying for fleas. You overlap a little bit and you work your way backwards. Okay, we're here in the bathroom treating for fleas, and I don't like to put a lot of treatment in a restroom, especially if there's a carpet where people step out of the bathtub to get dried off. I try to avoid those areas. However, I do want to treat, and so I'm just a little bit more lenient in a restroom area. And most restrooms, as you can see here, have a solid, non-porous surface. So as I mentioned earlier, it's important to make sure you don't overspray and allow your product to puddle up. There is an example of puddling up. If you look, before you leave, if there's any areas that you get too much liquid in, you probably want to go ahead and take some sort of paper towel or toilet paper and clean up the excess. I only showed you that by treating a little bit in excess so you could see you don't want it to puddle up. People are going to hopefully do the best job they can picking things up, maybe putting them on beds, making sure there's plenty of carpeted areas for you to reach. Now, it's their responsibility to do that. If you see a few things as you're going throughout the home that you can easily pick up or make ready, go ahead and go the extra mile and do that. However, you don't have to spend half the time of your treatment time doing that. They should be well prepared. As you can see here, there's a couple balls that this lady happens to have, and we don't want to spray these balls. We don't know if she throws these and her dog likes to fetch, so we don't mind picking those up for her. And you can also see this bed here. With this bed, there's no way to reach underneath it. However, I can easily move it back and forth. So it's not a big deal for me to move it as I get ready to spray and then move it back when I'm done spraying and spray the other side. If you do see a bed with nothing underneath it, you can reach your sprayer under there and do a little spraying under the bed. However, if they have, like a lot of people have storage under that bed, don't do that.
When treating a home, avoid spraying personal belongings, kids' toys, and pet, food, and water dishes.
As you can see, there's some stuff in the middle of this room that basically I'm not going to move. We did take a little bit of time and try to make it a little bit closer to the center of the room so we can spray on the outer edge of it. But as I spray this room, I'm going to try to stay about 6 inches away from all her personal property and stay 6 inches away from things like dog toys or AC or heating vents that brings air into the home. Also, it's important to check and treat closets, and so if there's clearance in a closet, definitely make sure you check that off the list when you're spraying for fleas and treat the closets as well. Okay, now when you're treating for fleas, you've done all the above. You've done granular on the outside, you've sprayed after you've done the granular, and you've treated the exterior. You've started on the inside by using your backpack sprayer and making sure you don't overspray and treating thoroughly on the inside without getting it on people's property or without getting the spray on wall paint. Now, only in situations where people are actually having a lot of pest activity with fleas do I recommend using a fogger. Now, let's just say you're in there, I pulled out the coverall, and I said on rare occasions you may need to wear a coverall so you don't get covered in fleas. If you ever notice yourself getting fleas on your jeans or crawling up, you need to probably consider using a fogger when you're done. And usually what I'll do with the fogger is do the 2 worst areas. So basically, if they have some in their bedroom and they see them in the living room, I'll use 2 foggers in those areas. And definitely if the home has a crawl space, that's one place that we normally will treat. However, in a crawl space, we'll more likely use a duster than a fogger. But you only use a fogger for fleas if there's current activity or if there's heavy activity. So they can be used not only on the initial and areas of heavy activity, but if you're doing a follow-up, what you want to do is communicate. And if the customer hasn't really seen any, don't worry about using a fogger. However, if they're still seeing fleas, I use a fogger after we're done treating in those areas. And definitely, once again, when you use a fogger, make sure you're at least 10 feet away from any pilot lights. If there's a water heater closet, you want to make sure you're at least 10 feet away from that. And you also want to make sure you inform your customer that it's important to be out of the home for 4 hours in order to let it dry. And it's a good idea to ventilate the windows for about 20 minutes when they return home.
Other important tips for a successful flea treatment. Number 1, spray area rugs underneath and on top. Number 2, spray underneath beds that don't have storage underneath them. Number 3, be more generous on the carpet than you are on the tile and hardwood floors. Number 4, use foggers in rooms that have severe infestations. Number 5, spray the front porch, back porch, and garage. This concludes today's course, Fleas 101.